Hello, Psych 101 students. Welcome to Module 4, Learning Objective 8, Operant Conditioning. Okay, so operant conditioning is learning controlled by the consequences of an organism's behavior. The organism gets something because of its response or its behavior. That something it gets is called a consequence. Perhaps it's a reinforcement, perhaps it's a punishment, but this is the essence of operant conditioning. You do something in the world, you do some kind of behavior, and based on the consequence, um, you will be either more or less likely to do that behavior again in the future. Operant conditioning is also known as instrumental conditioning because the organism's response is instrumental in causing a consequence. But the more common name is operant conditioning, of course. Okay, that's enough for here. So let's go back to where it started before Skinner took over and did most of the research in operant conditioning. But it started with Edward Thorndike, and he devised a puzzle box that that challenged food-deprived animals to find escape. There would be a trap door that would open if the animal performed a specific action. Behaviors that lead to escape are strengthened over time. They become more likely because he would redo it. Once the animal escaped, he would put them back in. And so what he found is that, yeah, if the animal did a behavior that led to it being able to escape, that behavior became more likely. Other behaviors get weakened over time, the ones that don't lead to escape. So, I mean, he did it mainly with cats. So, like, if the cat just scratched at the wall, I mean, that wouldn't get it out. So, over time, its wall scratching behavior would decline because it wasn't working for it, and the actual behaviors that allowed it to escape would become a little bit more prominent over time. Okay, let's take a look at what the puzzle box looked like here. So Thorndike designed this puzzle box and others to assess learning in animals, and he used it in developing the law of effect. So looking at this puzzle box, you can see that the cat's placed in the box, food is placed outside where the cat can see it. So this is an important part. The animal, this cat has been food deprived, so it's hungry, and so he puts the food outside because he wants the animal, maximally motivated, so that they're not just taking a nap in there, which would just throw off the study, because he's timing how long it takes him to get out on each trial, and they would do like lots of repetitions. I mean, this cat might be in there like 30 times in a row, and he would record the time it takes him to get out each time. But so that's the purpose of food depriving them. It's in order to create a motivation. You have the food outside where they can smell it and see it, and so they really are trying to get out. After several attempts to get out, the cat accidentally presses the lever. The door opens and the cat gets to eat some. The cat gets put back in the box, and it's going to be, somewhat more quick to press the lever to get out, in the future, because that behavior worked for it on a previous attempt. So, what I want to make clear though is that these cats are not gaining insight, like logical insight on how to escape the way a human would. I mean, let's say you were locked in a tricky puzzle box, and let's say that it took you 10 minutes to figure out how to get out. Well, if somebody put you right back in, you would get out in 10 seconds because you would remember how to do it. That's not the case with these animals. So even though they would, find the way to get out, step on the lever and escape. I mean, maybe I don't know how long it took them, but let's say it took 5 minutes the first time to stumble upon that solution. Then it doesn't all of a sudden go way down because it's figured it out. It's like the next time might be 4.5 minutes, and then it might go up to 5 minutes again. Like it doesn't steadily decrease, but over time, what you see in the graph is that it's on average it's getting out in less and less time. But there's no insight point in the graph where it's like all of a sudden figures it out and the time goes right down like it would for a human. You would just once you figured it out, you would get out as quick as possible every time. So, what happens is that it just the behaviors that work for it just become a little bit more likely, and the ones that don't work become a little bit less likely. And this is what the law of effect basically is stating, Thorndike's law of effect. Any behavior leading to a satisfying state of affairs, like stepping on the lever to get out, is likely to be repeated. So if we're rewarded in some way for a response to a stimulus, we're more likely to repeat that response to the stimulus in the future. Yeah, and the second part is any behavior leading to an annoying state of affairs, like I said, if it's just scratching at the walls, it does nothing to get it out, is less likely to reoccur. So if we are punished for a response to a stimulus, we are less likely to repeat that response to the stimulus in the future. Because stepping on the lever led to the satisfying state of escaping from the box, the cat took a little less time to step on the lever the next time it was placed in the box. And so this was early work. This is kind of like the early version of what became operant conditioning. And B.F. Skinner, he was one of the most prominent psychologists really of all time, and he developed a more formal learning theory based on Thorndike's law of effect. He did much more research and experimentation to figure out all the parts of operant conditioning. So he studied how basically studied rats and pigeons mainly, and he studied how they learned through operant conditioning. An operant conditioning conveys how animals operate on their environments to produce effects. So an operant, the word operant it's an action that is performed on an environment and has consequences, maybe either positive or negative consequence. But an operant just means some kind of action that you perform on an environment, on the environment. It might be pushing a lever, or I don't know. It might be solving a math problem. But it's just you've done something. You've done some kind of behavior. Okay, where am I here? The consequence of an action determine the likelihood of behavior in the future, and that's really the basis of operant conditioning. The consequences of an action determine the likelihood of behavior in the future. A reinforcer is a stimulus that occurs after a response and increases likelihood of response reoccurring. So if you do some kind of response and somebody hands you money, you're more likely to do that response again. Okay, where am I here? Looking. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to zoom in on this picture. So here we see Skinner with a rat in this chamber here. And the rat um, in this chamber learns that the lever should be pressed when the light comes on. This is one of his types of experiments. So when that light comes on, you can see the light above the rat's head. Then he has to press a lever, which I think he's doing now, and then he can obtain food. So the pressing of the lever is the operant. Remember, it's a behavior, and it has consequences. A reinforcer, which is the food. So he does an operant to get a reinforcer to get food. This box is it was called an operant chamber, and it was created by Skinner, and when he was a graduate student, and he created it to assist with laboratory analysis of animal behavior. It's now commonly known as a Skinner box, and it was a great invention. I mean, it's you could have a whole bunch of these in a lab, each one with a rat in it, and it records, every bar press that they make and the timing and whatnot, and you can set up different conditions. Like maybe when the light comes on, the rat has to press the bar 5 times to get a piece of food, or maybe it can only press the lever when the light's off. Like you just set up different conditions, and the thing is, you don't have to be there, like monitoring this rat like you would in many studies. Where you have to actually be there picking the rat up and moving it around and doing this and that. Like you could, this might sound cruel, but you can leave a rat in one of these boxes for hours, and you're automatically monitoring the behavior. You can see a printout, coming out over here, probably, all the bar presses that this rat's making, and these were designed with different conditions. That you could set different conditions. And some of them were for pigeons, some for rats. The pigeons would have something they could peck with their beak. The rats would have a lever to press. Sometimes it would be like two different lights, or so they you could make them a little bit different. But it was genius as far as he would gather so much more data than what they used to do when somebody would handle a rat, one person with one rat, and studying it and recording things. Now you have 100 rats and 100 operant chambers, and all producing data, and knock off a study in a couple of days. Um, anyway, so it was a very relevant invention, even though it looks a little shoddy here. But remember, this is still the early 1900s when he was a graduate student and came up with this device. They look much more modern now, but okay. All right, moving on here. Remember, it's often known as a Skinner box now. Okay, the operant conditioning technique of shaping consists of reinforcing behaviors that are increasingly similar to the desired behavior. Shaping can be used to train animals to perform unusual behaviors. And, in this example here, this person's trying to teach their dog to surf. So, like, shaping is kind of like you're rewarding baby steps towards the final goal. So he's first rewarding this dog just for getting close to the surfboard. Whenever the dog comes over to the surfboard, he gives it a little treat. Like, so when you do this kind of training, you've got a whole bag of little treats, and then it's not enough that he's nearby, but now the dog would be hanging out because he's learned, hey, if I'm close to that board, I get treats. And then you make him, he's got to stand on the board, and then you start giving him treats, and so the dog learns, oh, if I stand on it, I get treats. And then you can see he's moving with the dog on the board, holding him, and this is going to get the dog treats. And then finally the dog has to do it on its own, and it's surfing. And this is when you see animals in movies or commercials and doing funny kind of behaviors. the basic method. You you can build up a complex set of behaviors for an animal by doing it one little step at a time, which is shaping. And by the way, it's not only for animals. We use shaping all the time with our children as we teach them new things, and um, we correct behaviors and move move them closer to doing things right, a little one step at a time. Um, I've included a video of Skinner using shaping with a pigeon. So it's only a minute or two long, but it's just kind of interesting to see. He gets this pigeon spinning around doing a circle by just by when he gives it rewards. He shapes it like doing more and more of a circle until it starts spinning. And anyways, take a look at that after this video. Hey, going on here. So there are different types of reinforcers. Primary reinforcers are those that are necessary for survival, such as food or water or shelter. Secondary reinforcers are events or objects that serve as reinforcers but do not satisfy biological needs. And this would be things like tokens or money is a good example of a secondary reinforcer. Or like when you're in school, you might get stickers, in the young grades. Praise is a good secondary reinforcer. Getting applause from people is a secondary reinforcer. So anything that's not, uh, um, necessary for survival is a secondary reinforcer. Okay, responses to specific behaviors can lead to generalization and discrimination. So we talked about generalization and discrimination with classical conditioning, but it's a very similar idea um, in operant conditioning. So, for example, let's say you tell a joke in class at school, and you get reinforced with laughter. So you might decide to generalize that behavior. And so you go home and you tell the joke there as well, because it was successful in one location. So you try it somewhere else. You might also show discrimination by deciding not to tell that joke when you're in church. So generalization and discrimination is more about like, um, when and where you do behaviors and when and where you don't do them. And you're more likely to generalize behaviors if you're getting reinforced, and less likely if you're not being reinforced or being punished. Behaviors will also show extinction, another term that we looked at in classical conditioning. If a behavior receives no reinforcement, it will tend to move towards extinction. We don't keep up behaviors if we're not getting anything back. We most of the behaviors we do in life, like they provide us with some kind of reward. It might be small, like it might not be a tangible thing, like somebody's handing you something, but things can be just personally rewarding. You feel good for working out the gym, like it might be rewarding to you. You play a game and have a little fun doing it on your computer, and that's reinforcing. So like, but if you're not feeling like, oh, that something's worthwhile, like you're not getting anything back, why would you keep it up? So when something is not reinforced, it tends to move towards extinction. And Skinner felt that the best way to deal with childhood tantrums was to ignore them, and that they would extinguish on their own. He believed that was better than punishing a child, because when you punish them, you still give them some kind of feedback, um, and even though it's meant to be negative, you're still acknowledging them and talking to them and giving them feedback. And he says if you ignore the behavior, and if you get everyone to just completely ignore it, the child will just end up stopping the tantrums on their own. They're not working. They wouldn't be working for them. They wouldn't be getting anything out of them. They do them to get attention. And so when you decide to punish a child, you've given them attention. And so I've always thought that was an interesting idea, to just ignore negative behaviors in children, and if you can do it successfully, they should end on their own. And that will include learning objective 8.